I'm going to be talking about my time spent in South Korea as a missionary of the Southern Presbyterian Church.
Awesome.
I went in 1964, came back in 1975.
That's awesome.
It was only not even 10 years after they stopped the fighting. Of course, the war itself still goes on with things meeting at the between the North and the South.
Yeah, still today.
Till today.
Yeah, gosh.
And still problems. But anyway, I went to Korea in fall of 1964. But before that, in the summer, there were 6 of us that were going to Korea at that time, and there were many other people going to other places, some to Africa, missionaries to about 6 or 8 different places. So we had general talks on how to live in a foreign country.
Gotcha.
And we learned, we had a special number of weeks on phonics.
Just for your country that you were going to go to?
The phonics were really for everybody.
Oh, wow, okay.
Because if you're saying mawa, mawa, you don't say it like you say it in English.
Gotcha.
So anyway, we did that, and then we spent a number of weeks just studying Korean. So just the basic things. And when that finished, there's a picture in the thing about our graduating class. There were 5 or 6 of us, I think. And we had to put on a skit in Korean. And so we did The Good Samaritan. And one of the couples that was with us were the most southern, gentle people that I had ever met in my life.
Where were they from?
They were from South Carolina. And he was a businessman. And she just, did everything, took care of everything. And they were going, he was retired, but they were going for 3 years. He was going to work with the business end of the college in Daejeon at a Presbyterian college there. So anyway, we put on this show, and Uncle Bill was the man who was injured, so he was laying on the ground, and all he had to do was lift his hand and say "Mul, mul, mul," which meant water, water, water.
Gotcha.
And the rest of us said what we could, to fit in around it. But anyway, we had a good time, and then we left. 3 of us actually left. Wound up in California to go on a ship, a freighter ship.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And that was quite an experience. There was a home in Oakland that dealt with missionaries going western, especially, and they did everything. They were wonderful. You stayed there, you slept there, you ate there, you helped with whatever you could. And we were there probably for about a week or 2 waiting for the
freighter
ship to come, to be there. So anyway, we got on the ship and we're going under the Golden Gate Bridge, and one of the couples that were going to Taiwan, he had a tuba. So he pulled his tuba out and he was going to play the Star Spangled Banner. My country, 'tis of thee. And then he reached down inside and there was a pair of his underwear.
Oh my gosh.
So it kind of lightened the atmosphere of us leaving our homeland, and going this strange place.
Yeah.
But anyway, we got overseas about 2 weeks
Mm-hmm.
and stopped in about 2 different places in Japan where they unloaded things. They had big areas of grain and all sorts of stuff that machines just, took it off.
Wow.
And one place we were off there long enough that we got off and went to a Japanese restaurant for dinner, which was very nice. Anyway, then we got around to Korea, and Pete Mitchell, who was the head of the business end of the whole mission there, met us and took care of all the taxes and all the things that you have to do to get into a new country.
Yeah.
And we stayed with the mission there for a night or two. I don't remember exactly. But anyway, then we got on the train, and you go from Busan, you go up north and over to the east a little, the west a little bit, and you come to Daejeon, which is sort of the big city between Seoul and Daejeon, and then 2 ways go down. One goes down to Busan, and one goes down this way to Gwangju and Mopo, which was where we were going.
Okay.
The Southern Presbyterian Church had this southern area.
Gotcha.
The Northern Presbyterian Church had this Seoul area.
There you go.
And the Australian Presbyterian Church had Busan.
Oh, okay.
And so they, worked well, doing their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we arrived in Gwangju. I think we were getting off there. And there was one couple with 2 little children, and they had 2 beautiful little tricycles, that weren't wrapped in anything. They were just there. And when we got off, it was about midnight, and there were all sorts of Korean kids wandering around.
Wow.
Just looking, what can we love? So anyway, then the mission met us in a Jeep and took us back to where we were supposed to go. So anyway, then I wound up in Seoul doing language study.
Okay.
And I did that for 2 years, and even the 3rd year was pretty much language study, but doing other things as well.
Gotcha.
And the place where we stayed, we had a little area where there were 3 homes, and it was all, done. But if you walked through the front yard and over through another little area, you wound up at the language school.
Okay.
Which was in the Seoul University.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
So you were teaching college-age kids?
No, we were learning Korean.
You were learning Korean, okay.
We were the students.
Gotcha.
There were a lot of Catholics, priests in there, and all kinds of people, and we had class all morning.
Okay.
For 2 years, and it was okay. One semester I went to Daejeon to stay with some friends, and I studied there. And another semester I lived with a Korean family whose daughter was coming to the States. So anyway, they had 2 young boys and a high school daughter, and she was a pianist, and she was going to America.
Okay.
And so they wanted her to learn some English. Well, she wasn't very, pushy to learn English.
Gotcha.
I wasn't real pushy to teach English, but we managed all right. We went around some, and they had a very lovely, beautiful home. They had an indoor bathroom.
Oh, that was...
Which was very nice. It was on the 2nd floor.
Wow.
And they even had a bathtub there. And when you're sitting on the john, there's a big window with no shade, no nothing.
Oh my gosh.
And over across the street, there's a house with a big window. And there was an older man who sat there every morning reading his paper.
Oh my gosh.
And you just look, he never looked at us, and we never looked.
Yeah.
But it was just...
But most of the restrooms were separate from the homes.
Oh, yes.
Most of the time, yeah.
Oh, yes. Except in our own homes.
Gotcha.
You know, we were in a compound.
But most of the Korean homes.
But most of the nicer Korean homes now, we're having some, you know, bathrooms inside, but down in the country.
Yeah, wow, it's amazing.
Anyway, then when I got to to Mokpo, we were right on the edge of the country, and right across from it was a big island called Jeju-do. And one of my friends there was a nurse, and she was getting supplies and things for Jeju-do, and I went with her several times. It was very interesting. We learned quite a bit. We began by teaching a lot of English as a second language. Mm-hmm. And so we got familiar with many people, even up from Seoul in many different places. And they'd give me something, you know, when they left. I had one beautiful big thing across the wall that had a Bible verse in Korean on it.
Oh, okay.
And I got it from the students. It says on the back, from the students at this college, which was over sort of towards the end. I couldn't remember anything.
Oh, gosh.
But anyway, one of the interesting things about Seoul, too, was that you came from the train station, and there was a big, huge street mm-hmm. that went to the right. It went around past the army base. To the left, and straight ahead, it went right downtown. And then to the right, to the left, it went over here. And right in the middle was a huge mountain.
Wow.
And people walked up that mountain for many things. We went, my friends and I, we didn't walk, we drove. Mm-hmm. Chicken. Yeah. Anyway, we drove for Easter sunrise service.
Okay.
And then they had a big, huge screen up there that many people went when, what's his name, first walked on the moon.
Wow.
And they showed all that. They were as excited as the Americans were.
Yeah, the whole world.
Yeah, the whole world.
Gosh.
So that was interesting. Anyway, then I came home for a year furlough.
Okay.
And went around to many churches talking about Korea.
How did you get home when you came home for a year? Did you go?
I flew
that time, and then
I never went on a ship again.
Yeah.
No,
okay.
We flew every other time.
Yeah.
It was getting to that stage, you know.
Yeah.
Moving along a little bit.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was in Gwangju the next time, which was they had a hospital there, and there was a good dentist area there. There was an American dentist. Mm-hmm. And the doctors, they took care of us too, and, you know, did what we needed done.
And how was the food quality?
Well, in our homes, it was great. We taught our Korean chef how to do some things, and they already knew some things.
Okay.
When we went out to visit, we were told, you know, that you could not eat anything that wasn't cooked.
Gotcha.
And because they always had a lot of rice, there was rice water that was drinkable, that you were served. They were all served water from the rice.
Gotcha. Okay.
And they'd have all sorts of different things. There were little fish that the whole thing was cooked, and you just took your chopsticks and took a little part off of it and ate it. And you had rice, and you had, people now are getting sort of used to kimchi over here.
Yeah.
But I was not used to kimchi. I'm still not used to kimchi.
Yeah, fermented.
I grew up in the Midwest, and you don't eat spicy things. So, you know, you always have to eat some kimchi because you're weird if you don't.
Wow.
So we managed quite well, and we'd spend the night. Many times we'd go over to have a training for the teachers, and maybe we'd have a evening worship service. And I know one evening I guess it was a Sunday night maybe. I was the preacher, and one of the Korean guys had gone with us. He said, "Put a little more oomph into it. Don't just talk, just give it, you know."
Yeah.
So I learned to give it.
Good.
So anyway, we had this service and it was all over. We'd gone to their house to get a little snack or something. And they said that there was a group of people who'd come from over the mountain for the service.
Oh, wow.
And would we just do it again?
Oh, my gosh.
So we did it again.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we did it again.
Yeah.
There were that was one of the things that was kind of different
Yeah.
from a Korean and an American.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't do anything like that in America.
Yeah.
And one time we were out and we had a whole church full of little kids.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was as big as this room, I guess. And they were crammed in there and it was hot, it was summer. And we were going to show some slides, pictures, you know, and they were excited about that. But the electricity went off.
Oh, my gosh.
So, you know, what do we do? The teachers were going by and were waving things over the kids to get a little air
moving,
going.
yeah.
Nobody got up to leave.
Wow.
And finally we heard that a taxi had run into the electric pole down below where the place was.
Yeah.
Okay, so they were going to fix it. So anyway, they fixed it, and the lights came back on about 10:30
Oh, my gosh.
at night. And so we had the whole program then.
Wow.
And then the kids went. Some of the kids had little babies even with them, little ones.
Oh, my
You know,
gosh.
they carry them on their back.
Yeah.
And then they all went home.
Just stayed the whole night almost.
No parents came to look for them or
Wow.
to say, go home, you know.
Wow.
I mean, that would never,
What a different. Yeah.
never happen here. The crowds, they were so used to being close together,
Uh-huh.
you know, or if they have a home, they have maybe one room
Yeah.
that they're in.
Wow.
And many times if there was one room that, say, the minister and his family had, the minister himself would go and sleep with a friend so we could sleep there with his wife.
Wow. Yeah.
And in 1919, to give a little bit of history, Japan conquered China, and then they conquered Korea. So anyway, the holiday was called Sa Il Gu, which Sa is 4, Il is 1, and Gu is 9. So it was the 19th of April in 2019. And
1919, yeah.
1919, yeah. And they had prepared flyers all on The Secret, and they had them all over, and they were sort of pushing on the center.
Wow.
Like we do, what do they call it? When the Black Lives Matter, they had all the people got together and
A protest.
a protest.
Yes, gotcha.
A
Yes.
protest. So I
Yeah.
kind of forget words sometimes.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. I get
So the protest, and it was a big thing, and they, of course, were many eliminated,
it.
but that started a thing in the country for the Christians, that the only time they were free to gather to worship was at 4:00 in the morning, before anyone else was up.
Yeah.
And so they started doing that, and they were still doing it when I was there.
Wow.
And sometimes when I was there, I'd go with them.
Ugh. Yeah, that's tough.
But their faith was very strong.
That's
Yeah.
what keeps them together. That's for sure.
And staying in one of those little cottages, sometimes if it was cold, you'd sit on on the floor, had heat underneath the floor,
Mm-hmm.
and you'd sit under there, and they'd put some blankets over you, and it'd be warm,
Mm-hmm.
and you'd hear cockroaches or rats or something going through the
Yeah.
ceiling, you know, and you just,
Uh-huh.
okay, don't pay much attention to it. And the bathroom, well, you couldn't I guess you call it a bath. You don't bath in the bathroom, but it's a little shed off to the side, and the animals stay in the shed.
Mm.
And there's one little round place there where they've dug it, and they have little things to stand on, just and you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it.
Yeah.
And it's a little gross.
Yeah, a little bit adapting,
But that's, you know,
Yeah.
that's the one thing that I would really like to know, if now that Korea has improved so much.
Mm-hmm. You'd love
Hopefully
to see it.
that's better.
Yeah, I assume it is. Yeah.
They started to get electricity in the places when I left.
70s, yeah.
And just before I left in Seoul, they had Foremost had come and put in a big factory.
Yeah.
And you could buy milk and ice cream. I remember seeing the ice cream thing, bars coming down, you know, and hundreds of them, and coated in chocolate and all this stuff. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a huge
We
step.
couldn't have any of the ice cream ever, or the milk.
Wow.
When I lived in Daejeon for that 6 months or whatever it was, there was a Salvation Army compound not very far from us, and they had animals. And they'd come, and once a week they'd bring us a Coke bottle full of milk. So good.
Yeah.
And then before we left, they always had like the Bando Hotel and the one area where they had a lot of things for tourists, you know. And the palace was here, and another palace was over there, and you could go visit, and it was very nice. You know, a lot of places, sort of a hallway going down with little shops for different doodads, you know, Korean stuff that you could buy. But anyway, they had built a grocery store for everybody, for the Koreans. And it was very nice. I guess I started to tell you when we got out of the train station in Seoul, and you managed to get across that street, a little bit to the right and up another hill was the not the Salvation Army, the army.
Not the Red Cross.
Not the Red Cross, but where, you know, Bob Hope would go over and do
Yeah.
shows and things. He was with a group, and it was what the group was called.
Oh, I don't know.
I can't think of it now. But anyway, there was a big building, and guys could spend the night, you know, could stay there. And they had a lunchroom and a dining room and all sorts of things. And we could get a hamburger. And we could buy chits for that place with Korean money. It was the only place you could do that.
Yeah.
So it was very nice. Stop in there, get a hamburger and a milkshake.
Yeah.
And then go on. But we had a good time, and I got towards the end there, I was teaching in the seminary in Seoul, and they were having lots of riots and lots of closing of school, and people, you know, what we were saying before, protesting
Yeah.
in groups and going here and doing that, and so I had a friend that lived on this side of the palace, was in the middle, and I lived on the other side, and I'd stay over their place kind of late, and I had a little car, so I'd come back, and you couldn't go past the palace. There were guards there. So you had to go down several streets and other streets around and finally get around to go home.
Wow.
But at that time, I was involved in some English Bible study with some Korean ladies from the university. And then I got well acquainted with a Korean pastor who spoke really good English. The mission had known of him for quite a while. And Reverend Yoon, and his church, I went out there one time. I was way on the edge of the city, and it was a really rough edge of the city.
Ooh,
I mean, it was difficult. A lot of people there were factories out there. A lot of the girls in the church worked in the factories where they made sweaters. Sweaters was a big thing. And other clothing things. And one day he took me out beyond that, and it was shacks made with cardboard and straw and what have you, and the families would be living in there. And the ladies in there had jobs. They sewed the seams on the toes of socks.
Oh, wow.
And they did that all day long.
Gosh.
And they got about 30 cents a day.
Wow.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got really interested in that church. I spent some time out there working with them. And then I thought, well, I don't know what got me thinking about it. Should I stay or should I go home? And I thought, well, if I stayed, I really needed more language because I really wasn't that good at it. You know, I was good in some areas, but when you're in school and you make a presentation, you can make your presentation really well.
Yeah.
But then they ask questions. Try that again.
Yeah.
So anyway, I decided to come back home.
Yeah.
And so I wound up 11 years there.
Yeah. So while you were there, what were the celebrations like? I mean, for like special events?
Okay, one special event was in the fall when the moon was at a certain place. And everybody went home. I mean, it was a big, big holiday, 3 or 4 days long. And the ladies would dance in the night, to the moon circle. I used to know the songs and all that, but I can't remember.
Yeah.
But that was one. And Christmas, of course, in the churches we had Christmas.
Had Christmas.
Yeah, I was at this little church once for Christmas. And we shared in some different things. And it wasn't too out of the ordinary because it was Christian, and they all come from the same place.
And you got to see a wedding as well, right?
I got to see a wedding, and the weddings, it seemed like in Seoul particularly and in the cities, that the ladies wore sort of Western style things, but in other places they wore Korean. A Korean hanbok was a little tight top and a long skirt from there down. And and it was good. We got to go we got a month's vacation each year, which was really nice.
Yeah.
So once or twice I went up. The Southern Presbyterians rented a place, like a whole top of a mountain for $1 for 20 years or something like that, from the country. And we'd climb up there, and it was quite a climb. And the older people, I remember seeing one of the older men. He was in a palanquin where he sat, and they carried him.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
They carried him. They carried all our stuff up.
Ugh.
They carried everything. And Petrie Mitchell, this guy was telling me, he could make it up in 2 hours.
Oh.
But it took us about 4.
Wow.
But anyway, we spent 3 weeks, I guess, up there, and it was really nice. And then there was another place they had, sort of middle of the country on the shore of the sea to the left, to the west, and they had made the same arrangements. They had like a huge area that they had rented, like done that like for $1, you know, a year or something from the government.
Wow.
And just south of that was a whole Korean beach. And the Korean ladies often had little shops right at the gates.
Nice.
Where the other ones sell all these wonderful fruits and vegetables. But we stayed there one summer. Every summer they did a musical.
Wow.
And the one I did was Julie Andrews.
Okay.
The Sound of Music.
Oh, The Sound of Music. Okay.
Yeah, and we had a lady, a missionary from Australia who had the star.
Yeah.
And she had an English accent. So it was so much fun to do that.
That's awesome.
And they had a sort of like a long building of rooms that we could rent, and there was a restaurant, a lunchroom there where we could eat, and the beach was right there. It was clean and it was lovely.
Nice.
I went to the Korean part once early in the spring to work at a church and see things from that end. Yeah. And that was interesting too. Well, and all sorts of shacks, selling all kinds of stuff, everything you could think of. Wow. And all kinds of fruits and foods and funny foods. Yeah. The first word that I learned when I was back in school was yak. And the first word I recognized out in the city was yak. And yak was ya and a K, yak. And it was similar to CVS. It was a medicine store.
So why do they have these lines on the side here?
This sound is ya.
Yeah, okay.
And this sound is k.
Gotcha. Okay.
So there was an with one line, ya with two lines.
Gotcha.
All with one line this way, two with four lines that way. Everything was different, but it was. And actually, before I went, I learned about that alphabet. And I was in school, and I don't remember even what the class was, but I had such a good time learning. I wrote them all down, and got acquainted with them. Ya, ka, ya, kugyu, kugi, kuni.
Wow. Yeah, you still got it a little bit.
So anyway, I still have a little,
Yeah, good. All right.